A live Q&A. This is the place for any startup founder to ask the burning questions that are keeping you up at night and get answers from experts that have worked with hundreds of founders and their teams. Welcome. I'm your host today, Kirk Drage. I'm the CEO and co-founder at LeapSheep. At LeapSheep, we're on a mission to flip the 95% startup failure rate by making expert and personalized startup building guidance accessible and affordable to all founders. If you're a founder, welcome. It's great to have you here. This show is all about supporting you to get from an idea to build a business model hypothesis that can at least potentially get to product market fit on paper and then validate that it actually can in the real world before scaling you up safely to avoid the 95% startup failure rate. Thank you to the founders that have sent questions in before today. And if you've got any questions during the show, please drop them in the comments in LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll prioritize those while we're on air. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to have Jock Fairweather with us. Jock is the founder of Community VC, an online community supporting startups with collaborative due diligence, and Iceberg CRM for early stage founders to find and activate their early believers. Before this, Jock started and sold a luxury women's shoe label in Europe, started and destroyed the biggest incubator in the Southern Hemisphere, and has invested in 48 startups with a realized IRR of over 36%. Jock, it's awesome to have you here. I've been waiting to do this show for a number of months since we first started talking. How's your week been?
Hey, Coke. Absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for having me. Future state apology, I'll probably swear a lot. That's just my style. Anyway, it's been a big week. We announced basically like the newest iteration or the future state for what we're doing with Community VC and Iceberg, and we've had a really great volume of feedback and praise. So we're super stoked. Community VCs was community due diligence so we basically set up a big forum of angels and investors that would collab on DD.
Yep.
Because it's quite a lift to do so if you're investing at sort of scale or at like a typical portfolio state. And then we've sort of iterated over time, learned a lot of things, obviously. And so the future state for Community VC is we want to build, or we probably already have, the biggest open forum for founders, angels, and experts to structurally collaborate and communicate based on questions and answers and etc. And we're building out heaps of sub forums for a lot of specificity. And then Iceberg, as you suggested, is a CRM for early stage founders to build networks and activate momentum around their early stages. So literally, I have a vision that I'm committing to. I want to announce it to my network, and I want to start bringing them on my journey as soon as possible, because there's always like building a product and a business.
Yeah.
But there's all the people you can gather around you that can invest, advise, and advocate for you too.
Yeah. So you're a startup helping startups.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it.
A few of us behind it have had a maybe a combined 10 goes. So yeah.
Yeah, no. When we first talked, it's clear that we have such philosophical alignment on why founders need better support and what's broken, and you're so passionate about that. I love that, and I think you've got so much credibility in terms of really advocating for founders, which probably doesn't happen as much as you'd love to see in the industry, and I think. One of the things that really struck me when we first spoke is that you said, look, I've built next to this company. I get people that are approaching me for support on how to build their e-commerce shoe company. And I'm like, dude, that was 10 years ago. The world's changed massively. I'm probably not your guy. And like that level of, I think, humility and care and passion about founders, that whole mindset that you've got there just personifies that, and I think that is great to hear. It's so good to hear.
It's I think that's super important for anyone really, just so you're not bullshitting. I have a thing like written next to me on the wall that it's like, it doesn't matter if we're building CRMs or forums or whatever. All I want to do is find insanely cool founders and connect them to the smartest, most experienced people that can support them. Like that's all I'm attempting to do. What we're building is just a method to attempt that, like at scale, and capture all of that for future use.
Yeah, I love it. It's so good. It's so good. And I think one of the trends, if I can call it that, I'd love your perspective. But one of the trends I see is that more and more founders are starting to build in the open, and there's this movement around, don't do things behind closed doors. Don't get clever people behind closed doors, and then try and have some sort of launch party and come out to the world. Just build in the open from day one, and it might be a bit bumpy. You might get some feedback that you don't necessarily like or you're not expecting. But it'll make you stronger, and you'll build your credibility because people can see what's going on, and you'll start attracting the right kind of people to you. Is that a fair thing? You taking advantage of that movement?
It's our entire underlying hypothesis, like for existence, basically. When I was doing lots of investing, in a nutshell, right? This is like exactly how it happens. A founder builds a deck in a silo, and then they shoot it to me cold, or whoever cold. And from that point, I have to be in a good mood. I have to have not seen better shit the same day, and I have to care, first of all. Then I need to build trust with the person. I need to bridge all of my knowledge gaps around what it is that you're up to. And I need to find signal about what you're up to. Like, I need to know that Kirk thinks it's also cool because he understands PMF in this space. Otherwise, I kind of think I'm insane. And that lift is like, I don't know, 20 hours at least. Yeah. And then 2 to 3 months crows fly, right? And so what's crazy is the founder has not brought me on the journey at all. And from that point has this huge ambiguous time period with me and all the other people that they're spraying, where the likelihood of drop off of my care factor across all of those 3 streams is really high. And so if you knew me personally and knew that I love AFL, Dota 2, drawing and stuff like that with my daughter, fashion, these things that were interesting to me, I loved whatever, the creator economy style business models. The easiest thing you could do is reach out to me and be like, yo, dude, this is what I'm up to in this space. I think we're going to change the world. It'll be real cool. If you just like followed me along, or I could just send you updates, just keep in touch, give me any feedback, that would be cool. And over an extended period of time, you keep doing that in a consistent, structured cadence, and you like execute. It doesn't matter, by the way, sort of executing positively or negatively, as long as you're continuously experimenting, progressing, compounding towards that final vision.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy into what you're up to.
Yeah. Right.
Like over time, of course I am. And I think about this all the time because I've missed heaps of hot startups just because, I don't know, I just don't know the space. And at that exact moment, I couldn't be fucked, like looking into it, to be really honest with you. But I remember specifically a handful of companies that came to me cold, but bear in mind, this is like 5 of 5,000, where I had the meeting and everything to do with the business and what it was attempting was so in my like personal interest zone.
Yeah.
That at the end of the call, I was like, yo, just send me bank account details.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's like, I don't know the maths, 5 of, call it beyond 5,000 for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so why would I, as a founder, want to give myself that level of chance of success?
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
Totally insane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. So letting the people that you want to work with you, whether investors or advisors or whoever, into the journey. And how do you then assess that journey? Is it they're always winning? Is it that they do what they say they're going to do, or is it their speed of learning and their ability to pivot and make changes when the market tells them?
Yeah, speed of learning. I think everything is about like shipping cadence and iterating, because I suppose probably the only thing we know for sure is when a founder before pre-seed, and hopefully not seed, but most of all of that stage, so 36 months, turns up and says whatever they're going to do, you just know it's not. Like there's too much more to know. It's basically impossible. And then you think about in the macro environment, the rate of change of everything. How could you know? You're just bullshitting. So what you're really trying to do is show that there's a vision that will come true, like sooner or later, and that you're the person who can do it. And then all of the shit that you're presenting really is just bridging the gap between me believing that and then me believing that you're the people who will sooner or later like structurally figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So by showing the deck or the whatever you're showing your memo, really all you're doing is displaying that you're very thoughtful about the way you're approaching it. But really, I'm just buying into you and your vision, and then the fact that you will iterate at a fast enough pace to figure it out first.
I think that's flat out some of the best advice on a pitch deck. If I just put it in the context of what you said into a pitch deck, is so many pitch decks that you see are like deterministic. It's like, we're going to do this. We want you to back us and fund us because we're going to do X. And then when you don't achieve X, as you say, because what are the chances that you can actually achieve X, given all the, the volatility and unknowns and whatever, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting your investors up for failure. You're setting everything up for failure.
Yep.
Whereas if as you say, you've got that big vision and you go, this is the big vision, there's 50 ways that this could go, and we're going to find the one that's going to work.
So here's the thing, right? Like the deck scenario that's been drilled into everyone. The reality of the deck is that it exists because VCs and investors see such volume cold. That's why they need a snapshot, and that's why you need to hook them with some shit that's mostly a lie. However, if you think about any VC, all the ones that I know, very personally, tier one ones and all the rest, actually what you're dealing with is a human that represents that fund. And the human cares about different things and asks different things. So when you're going for Sequoia, you don't go for two of the different people at the same time. You go for the one that's perfect for you, and you build relationship and rapport with them.
Yeah.
The earlier you can do that, the more personal you can make that, the better chance of success you've got. Now, we're actually announcing internally our memo, which is like to our core supporter base of now 46, Kurt. And you'll see how non-deterministic I am in that memo. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're attempting. This is why it's fucking cool. This is what we think we can do. And this is why we're the people that have the best shot at doing it on the planet, and what kind of like difference it will make, buy in or not.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's so good. And then your value proposition to investor is, we'll spend the capital as wisely and as efficiently as we possibly can in pursuit of this goal. And we could take this really crazy circuitous route, and we could be doing different things this week than we said that we were doing last week. But it's all based on what the market's telling us and the rate of learning.
Totally. There is a really interesting thing. I've spoken about it a bunch of times. I'm sure you can Google it. But Andreessen Horowitz came up with sort of like this onion hypothesis chart. And basically I don't know if they still do it, but when you approach them for funding, you'd go, we need 12 months runway. Here's the 12 hypotheses we're trying to prove, and here's how much money we're allocating to each in a prioritized order. And you'd report on that. I don't know if that's the best approach, but it's a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. And one of the things I love about your process is the memo, which is forcing yourself to sort of communicate what's going on. Because I think you can get really caught up in just getting shit done and going, I don't have time to communicate what I'm doing. There's not enough time. Let's just keep doing stuff. And you don't reflect enough on, the learning that you're getting.
Yeah. The writing is really hard. It's not for everyone. And what I would say generally when you're nurturing a potential investor, advisor, or advocate at any scale is they all have preferences as to how they want to be communicated to, at what cadence, through what channel, in what way, about what things. And I think that's really important to figure out and grasp. That's part of what we've built in this library behind Iceberg.
That's so specific.
Yeah, it's ultra specific because there's people in our 46-person like early believers that are so behind us that I would never ask to do certain things, and some that I could ask to do this, that, and the other. And I think like the memo thing for us is about just putting a flag in the sand to say, hey, we're not just going to continuously daily, weekly, whatever, iterate, and then it becomes this huge murky journey that we're bringing you on. And at Community VC, let's call it every 6 months or so, we've put a new flag in the sand to go, here's everything we've learned. Here's what we know for sure doesn't. Here's what we know for sure does. And based on like the most pragmatic way forward, here's how we're going to progress towards the same end state.
Yeah. That's great. That's great discipline. And I think this is one of the things about Agile is you have to be really disciplined to get the flexibility.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that's a super important point. You have to be, I agree with that massively.
Cool.
And it's like we talk about celebrating work, not wins. And so like what you see mostly, like pitch deck's an example, but what you see on LinkedIn and whatever, it's just people like blowing smoke up their own ass mostly. I think what's much more interesting, and we know from investors and high-end advisors at large, experts, whatever, is that they want to actually watch your communication style, cadence, your personality come through. They want to see the ups and downs because they want to like actually get to know you over a period of time. And over all of our last investor interviews, like 30 of top tier people, they've all said that the average time between when they first ever like met or heard about a founder to pulling a trigger, if they ever did, was a year. That's average.
Yeah. And that speaks to an investor that really cares about their investments, as opposed to, you do meet a lot of investors that are in the gambling space. Like, I'm just going to put a portfolio of 40 companies together. Someone else is going to be the lead, and I'm really not going to think about it too hard. So there's different types of investors, and I think you really want to build the relationships with the ones that are going to add value. And your advice there is excellent. Really
That's
is.
Not to suggest sometimes if at the right dilution and terms, etc., someone will flip you money and not be involved. That's fine.
Yeah.
It just depends.
So let's jump into some of the questions, because I think we've had founders struggling with this challenge, and you guys are sort of becoming experts at this community building. How do you, when you're very first starting as a founder, when you don't have a product yet, what's your view on how do you build this community around you? When do you start building this community around you? What's your view on that?
Well, the pump up answer is join the iceberg waitlist, and then we'll fucking literally show you in a complete CRM template way how to do it at scale. But the answer as to like how I did it and we started originally, and sort of, well, we learned from the actual gold standard tier one founders about doing all of this.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, originally, we just, and when I'm talking about a supportive community, I'm not talking about like your early fan customers. I mean, some of them do fall into this sort of stage, but I'm talking about potential investors, advisors, and advocates for you.
Yeah.
Of course, some customers fall into that category too, but sort of you might have a CRM or however you're attempting your product where there's a whole nother group of people that can be extremely valuable to you along this journey, particularly because you can't let them down as much with the product and the customer because you're not selling them anything. So they're buying into you and the dream, remember? So they're coming for a longer journey. So what we did, or what I did circa 2 years ago, is I had this idea for community VC, and I thought about who were the people within reach for me that filled my biggest gaps, that I knew potentially could invest, that had some sort of alignment to what I was up to, which was community VC, the original premise of it, which was doing community due diligence at scale via content. That was the original thing. But then I realized I hate making content, but another story.
Yeah.
So I just reached out to all 5 individually, and basically I was like, yo, dude, this is what I'm up to. This is what I think we can achieve. We reckon it's going to be real cool. Could I basically just communicate with you however you're up for it around our progress? You can just like have a call every now and then or give me feedback, whatever suits. I just started like that. 5 different people, 5 different channels.
Yeah, right.
Over time, put 5 in one channel, but still nurtured them in like the way they wish. But I sort of did like our announcement comms in one channel.
Yeah.
And over time, like as we met people, and some was inbound, some was outbound, it's all various. I started sort of like bringing them closer and closer and into like this one group. We experimented with heaps of stuff, monthly updates, weekly updates, just like sharing notes whenever we got a win, running end of month, like we call them supporters, or like our early believer group.
Yeah.
Early believer group monthly, like calls, group calls, so they can just turn up and ask questions about the stuff. And over time, we figured out and started doing it on like 50 other founders, or sorry, helping them do it. What sort of like the best things worked depending on each person being like cold, lukewarm, or warm.
Yeah.
Whether they were current or potential investor, advisor, advocate. And as we said, like what channel, what cadence, how they like to be spoken to, even length of ask, etc.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how we've been running all of what we've been doing, and for our founders. Because I just want to like caveat something which is a layup from what we were speaking about before. We tried something which was to help founders create like a memo, and we would get like basically a long form deck, a long form deck, and we'd get all of these insanely cool people involved to help with it, do interviews, do all sorts of stuff. And what continuously happened was that the founders ignored the fact that we've got 10 of literally who we would suggest the best possible people ever to be involved with you at any capacity. And they would just anchor everything to, when we finish this memo, we'll spray it at everyone and we'll get our money.
Yeah.
And it took us time to realize, which is why we're doing everything we're doing now. But if these people are engaging in your shit, you should be talking to them a lot and trying to like get them as close into your web as possible.
Yeah.
Yes, because they're the perfect people. And if you do the right job, they're the ones who are going to either intro you to people who give you money or give you money. And we were dumbfounded, but never realized for ages how to help founders like work on that, because they kept getting anchored to what everyone's been taught, which is like memo deck, whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
Finish that shit, spray it, get money.
Yeah. I love it.
Wild to me.
I love it. What you're describing there is, what we've, I think, figured out, through our journey is every part of your business where you've got external stakeholders, you've got to think about that in sort of a product centric way where you're looking for product market fit. And so what you're describing is like, you really have to know who your customer is. If you're looking for advisors and investors and advocates, you have to know who they are so that you know what they want. And you're talking about what channels, what sort of communication style. And so that's just like doing your user research when you're building your main product for your main customers, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
so you're describing that level of customer discovery, but now you're doing it on the investor side, on the advisor and advocate side. And then you're managing a sales funnel and a marketing funnel the same as you would manage for a customer. So there's an initial outreach, and you're not selling anything during that initial outreach.
Yeah.
And then there's a nurture period. And then at some point when they're ready, you've built enough trust and credibility, there's enough alignment, you might then try and make a transaction happen.
Yes, or we internally would call it like activate them.
Yeah, right.
Some people will never invest, and that's fine. But some people will, whatever it is your product is, will send you 10 referrals.
But also there's something there about your mindset around, you don't just want an investor to invest, you want an investor to be a wild advocate.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same thinking you need to bring to your customers for your main product. It's not just about getting revenue, not just about making sales transactions. I need to get customers that are advocates so they sell more customers so that I can reduce my cost of customer acquisition.
Yeah.
And you're bringing that same thinking to the investor and the advisor side.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. And, the main thing that I take away from this conversation, if you don't have that mindset, doesn't matter what tools you're using, doesn't matter how clever you are, doesn't matter how hard you work, without that mindset, you will not be successful.
Yeah. And just as we were saying, like, what exactly we'd said before, just to double down, if these people buy into the vision where the Titanic's heading, or whatever ship that didn't sink is heading, they're on the journey with you, like with you as a person, to wherever you're going. And so all the iterations you're making on the customer side, like, yeah, they care that you're being pragmatic and whatever, but it doesn't affect them. And these people are up for the ups and downs and hearing about that, because that's how they buy into you further. Your customers don't give a fuck if your thing didn't work. They're like, dude, it didn't work. Okay, so way less forgiving. So this is like this undercurrent that helps build success. It's like literally why I named the thing iceberg. Because there's so much work, there's so many people, there's so many things under the surface that make the top visible and successful.
Yeah, so true. So true. Yeah. And treating this like a sales process, and this is something that I never understood coming from having sales experience in my background, is the way that the sort of classic investor pitches, build a deck and spray it out there. It's not nurturing your opportunities one little bit. And so it just makes so much sense.
Can I touch on one other thing? I know I'm harping on, but I clearly give so many fucks about this, and I feel like it's so important. We identified a long time ago that, of course, some people that spray decks get the money. Okay, so let's just forget that. But it's like 1 in a trillion or whatever it is.
It's not a very repeatable journey.
No. So founders often have like vision, etc., and get friends and family money, and then off they go to the races. And from there, what they do is they go directly for lists of angels, syndicates, funds. And practically always they're too immature for it. And something that is missed beyond like people being able to watch your journey is the halo effect and signal of the people you can like, and also ignoring that the amazing people can help you make better decisions. But there's a halo effect and signal that's involved in attracting the right kind of people to be supporters of you early. And more often than not, they're cool for you to mention them too. And we've had it. We're not trying to get VC money, maybe one day. But when we talk to them and we're like, hey, look at these people in our crew, and I won't name them for whatever, you'll find out who they are. And they're just like, holy fuck, how did you get that guy to be there, to give you money?
Such good advice. Such good advice.
And it's just like, it's the easiest layup ever, because a huge part is like, chances are I already know they invested in 2 or 3 of them and were wildly successful with them. So if they're behind us, they're like, oh, lay down Mazaire. Clearly, this guy must know something.
Yeah, I love it. And it's one of those lessons that is really hard to learn. And maybe if you've been successful with the spray the deck and raise capital and have an exit, you may not even realize that this is a problem for most people.
Another really interesting insight, we're going to give away all our secret sauce, is that actually more often than not, like almost always, these really incredible early believers are right under your nose. The thing is, that same story I just told you, if you go to whoever, this guy over here or this girl, and they are a potential investor advisor, whatever for you, and you spray them with a deck that's like, yo, we're raising 5 mil, flick us some cash. That's a really different ask than, hey, like, let's say the old adage, you want money, ask for advice. You want advice, ask for money. Like, it's a really, really different approach. And they're honestly, they're almost always sitting there, i.e., like in your LinkedIn contact list, your early believers more than likely are there, and more than likely you've crossed paths with them before, you've worked with them before, you've sold shit to them before. They're sitting there and you're completely ignoring them. And that's because you're taught to spray and pray decks instead of like bring people on a journey and nurture them. Honestly.
So good. That's gold. That really is. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about quality of advisors and how do founders navigate this space. Like when you're, I mean, even if you've raised capital, you've got a product and you've got customers, as a founder, you're still on this crazy steep learning curve, right? You're like, it's not until like you're well into your 6th or 7th year and you're doing like, 10, 12 million before you really sort of start to get a little bit of an understanding of the game you're playing, I think. So before you're at that sort of stage, how do you navigate this space? Because a lot of what you're saying, I would put into the contrarian bucket when it comes to startup building. Like what you've said is like, you're not the core, you're not the mainstream startup guy when you're saying kind of things that you're saying.
So trying to navigate the advice space. I think, as you suggested before, like a bit of, street smarts and pragmatism makes some sense. As you were suggesting, I had a luxury women's shoe label more than 10 years ago. And back then, e-commerce didn't even exist, like for shoes. Literally, I think there was just Net-a-Porter, and they were only just trialing it. So we went through stores. So if you came to me today and you're like, how do I build a shoe company? I'd be like, literally no idea. Yeah. Crazy to be asking me. I mean, I can
wild to me.
rip some shit at you, definitely, but I think it's not going to be valuable at all. And so there's sort of like relevancy and frequency of someone's like intimacy of whatever it is you're attempting to ask them. I think that's really important. For the most part, anyone I've ever asked for advice, they'll ask me a whole shitload of questions. And then off the back of that, say, from my experience, X, Y, Z, and then give me some sort of like decision-making tree to move from there. That's the kind of like really sophisticated person advice that I would expect in a nutshell. But I think it's hard to go past, well, first of all, figuring out what your gaps are, which there'll be plenty. I have so many. And trying then to outwardly look for people who can fill those gaps, who have relevancy, frequency, intimacy in, those gaps.
Yeah.
For me, I bucket them, as we've suggested, in like investor, advisor, and advocate buckets.
Yeah.
But I think I'm usually looking for someone who's still operationally active, and it's an ultra bonus if they've been multiple personas and multiple operational. Yeah. And so our two original guys, I will say their names because I already say their names. But there's a guy, Gordon Tan, who's my original dream guy that I met 10 years ago randomly, who has had multiple exits, 150 mil or so worth, fractional CTO, CEO kind of guy. He's like a better version of me in every way, in my opinion, and highly actively invests, but big sums in a concentrated amount and gets very heavily involved. And then there's another guy, Jonathan Louis, who was the original founder of Airtasker and now runs Soho app, also has a venture fund. And so like these guys have been all of the personas end to end and are still highly, highly active and fit the bill of like gaps that I have. So Jonathan, for example, AI and marketplaces. Gordon, anything CTO, outsourcing, a redundancy of the tech, et cetera, et cetera. So I scoped them out I'd met them way ago, but as soon as I was like, yeah, I'm committed to trying this community VC thing, I began like engaging them and slowly like getting them closer and closer. Last thing is that sometimes even they tell me shit that I'm like, nah, because unless they're in with us, they can't see everything we see.
Yeah.
And so you can always, and they're not going to get butthurt about it. You just take bits and pieces of what everyone says and come to the conclusion of the best next step for you guys where you are based on what, like a culmination of what everyone said. I think typically people used to get like, 3 main advisors on a board and give them equity and whatever the structure is.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't believe it. Honestly, I would have 30 people, or we've got 46 and it's ever increasing. People who are willing to engage in the way they're willing to engage in what they're specifically good at and lean on them when necessary or as a collective to continue making decisions in the best possible way.
Yeah. Wow. That last 2 or 3 minutes, there's so much gold in there that you've shared, because so many founders think they have to build their product before they can really start to engage people. They don't feel like they've sort of proven their worth or their credibility until they can pop out their product. And what you're saying is start early, start really early, and some of the filters that you're using there is great. The intimacy and the recency. They really they still actively involved at the coalface, I think that's, so important because, the way that we build products has changed so much in the last 10 years. The way we market and sell products changed so much in the last 10 years. The way that we're, raising capital and building teams changed so much in the last 10 years. So that is absolutely critical. And also thinking about the fact, I call them ingredient advisors. So you're saying, get 30 advisors. If you've got 30 gaps that you can identify, 30 advisors, I think that's really, really smart. Find those ingredient advisors. But at the end of the day, as a founder, you have to be that system guy that goes, how much of each ingredient do I need to make the system work? Because it's always a trade-off between this ingredient versus that ingredient when you're building your company. You can go too far and overinvest in one area and underinvest in another area, and you're cooked and you're done. So yeah, great advice.
And our opinion would be that it's highly personal. Like if people looked at the way I've done exactly what we've done, not in the nurturing sense, I think that's been super, super effective.
Yeah.
But how deep I brought certain people in, what I've given them in return, etc. That's so personal to me. And I don't give a flying fuck what any VC thinks about the way my cap table might look for what. If I, as the founder human, go, I need a co-founder that has core, like operational product skills, which I do have.
Yeah.
But I also want two guys that I'm willing to give significant equity to for even low amounts of cash, because I feel like for this bit of what we're doing and that bit of what we're doing, I trust them deeply, of course, but I can rely on them heavily. I'm going to do it because I'm the kind of guy that likes to sort of work with a very core group of people that are like ultra high end and use and bounce off them continuously to make decisions really quickly. And having the four, let's call it, that works so well for me.
Yeah.
But just me. It doesn't have to be for everyone.
Yeah. So something that I feel is coming through with what you're saying is there's a level of patience that you need here. You're not trying to sort of force anything to happen. You're not trying to. It's like you build a product and now I've got to force it onto the market and prove to everyone that this is the right product and I was successful. Everything you're saying is sort of very much. Well, we've got this idea for how the world's going to change, and somebody's going to win, and we want that to be us, and we're going to work really hard and learn faster than anyone else. And you kind of let the process do its thing. Is that a fair
Totally
summary?
That's the exact summary.
Yeah, it's such a good mindset. And how do you then think about capital raising in the world where we're used to sort of raising some money to do something pretty definitive, which never works out the way that you expect that it works out? How do you manage failure in that kind of environment?
Failure to raise capital or failure once you have?
Once you have capital and things aren't going the way that you thought.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that the blessing of creating the early believer group the way that I'm suggesting is you have the intimacy and the transparency built in from the start. And if you're proactively talking to them and giving them updates, good and bad, and etc., I suppose that the reality is, right, if you did a quarterly report, on the 89th day of the quarter, you might realize, holy shit, we missed this milestone by miles. But surely, internally, by the third week of a quarter, like it's not panning out.
Yeah.
So shouldn't then be when you're addressing that part of whatever isn't going right.
Yeah.
So I think this mode of operating is more about like prevention than cure, if you catch my drift. Like, sure, sometimes it's just whatever, macro things happen and you're totally fucked. That did happen to my first ever investment, actually. And I gave him way more than I should have, but blew it in a year, macro things. But I backed that guy again, actually, which became my biggest returner ever. Because amazing operator, so transparent, so whatever, but something, anyway, different, various things went wrong. But I think that like, it's inevitable you could lose all the money, but also if you're proactive in the approach, you should be able to figure it out. And there's, especially in today's environment, like it is possible that you might run out of money. You all just go on equity only or get side jobs until something comes along and you bring it back. I think the thing is investors know you can lose the money. Like that's why there's a portfolio approach in startups, obviously. But what they really want to see is like that you're honorable and you try everything under the planet, like that's possible to do to make it work, and that you're honest and etc. And the truth is that if you do that, I'm an example of it. That guy I was just literally mentioning is an example of it. That people will back you again.
Yeah. So more authenticity. I think we have a challenge in the global startup world that there's this sort of fake it till you make it. You go to an accelerator, get to a demo day, tell the world how awesome you are, trying to get some capital, and then think the wheels fall off because you can't deliver on everything that you promised. So you're taking the opposite approach, which is be real, be authentic, show all the warts and everything to your investors and advisors, and get them on board to help you, because that's half the reason they're investing in the first place.
Do people on the show be ultra vulnerable? Yeah, they can. Okay. Yeah. My second business, the whole fucking thing was a show. Like, no, it was like we built a really amazing thing, had 6 buildings, all this shit. Like, it was good. But in terms of the way we approached it was celebrate wins only and be hyper aggressive towards the market. And what that did at the end, when it was my decision, but some macro factors caused it to be a fucking disaster. What it meant was that I was very polarizing, which means a lot of people, when it went wrong, came down on me really hard, media, etc.
Yeah,
right. And because I was only truly honest with a very small group of people, I think it was 13 is what I remember, like remembering people. At the end of it all, even though we'd helped thousands of people, we built the biggest thing ever and it was fucking awesome, we were famous, whatever, only 13 people like reached out and was like, yo, so sorry, I'll do anything for you, whatever. 13 of like thousands.
Wow.
And that is the other edge of the sword of trying to be like the American startup hero. It truly is. Yeah. And so a lot of what we're doing now is honestly just part of my personal journey too.
Part of your journey. It's the best origin story, right?
Yeah. It's like anyway.
That's why you've got so much conviction in where you're heading.
Unlimited. Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. What a backstory. That's so cool. So cool. So let's maybe talk about resiliency, because I think it's a great sort of segue into this. Is how do you stay resilient as a founder? It's a brutal experience for most of us. You get punched in the face every day by customers. As you say, the macro environment, throws chaos and spanners in the works. You constantly meet people that just don't care about what you're doing, and you give and you get nothing back. What's your advice? How do you stay mentally resilient?
Like having ultimate conviction of what it is you're trying to achieve is really important. And I think being really aware of that, because as soon as you're not all in, or you've got half a foot out, or you don't really care about the thing you're solving, I think when it gets really difficult, you're probably just going to let it go. It's one of the things we said to our early investors about this, like this whole origin story, all of this. I'm like, you need to understand that this community, this due diligence of investing, all of this stuff in startups here, I've like been in it for 18 years, rich and poor. And this is all I've been doing. When I made shitloads of money, I poured it all back into startups. It's all I have known. It's all I'm interested in and will do no matter what. So I'm pretty backable in that sort of sense.
Yeah.
So I think like figuring out what you truly have conviction about, I think is like the ultimate core before you're sort of starting something. Because if you're sort of like money driven, I think it would be pretty fair to say most of the most successful entrepreneurs ever aren't money driven at all.
Yeah.
That's probably, I would suggest, true. They're like mission driven rather.
Yeah.
And I think like I go for really long walks and I call people that I respect and have honest chats with them. It's been my strategy since the day I got the call. A Tuesday morning after my birthday, I took my best friend to the UFC and I got a call basically saying, "You're fucked," and everything's fucked.
Everything changed.
And
The
I
world
just went
changed.
for three days of continuous walking and calling people to decide what the best decision was, whether to save it, which I probably could have, or should I just cop this for the next 10 years and waste my life, all of these things. But
Yeah.
Original conviction for sure.
Yeah.
And then building these legit, honest, deep, transparent relationships with humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And doing it while going on walks.
It's great. And it's a real theme for everything you've talked about today is the authenticity and the focus on people. When you're building a scalable technology company, like any of us that are building a startup, but you hardly mention technology at all.
Yeah, and I think what is interesting in the broader environment is it's pretty widely understood or thought about now that the teams that are building massive companies are very small teams now.
Mm.
It's like a 15-person team creating unicorns, whereas I don't know what it was before, but a lot.
Yeah.
And so then the intimacy really matters, doesn't it? And so you might have 15 in your team and 15 of your flexible board or whatever you want to call it that you've nurtured. That's very intimate. And so it really, really matters, these relationships.
Yeah.
Whereas at scale before, I'm sure the way that managers and stuff worked was that people were sort of just like transactions, they're just numbers. Yeah. I think a lot of the success now isn't going to be like that anymore, which is really interesting. And so then in terms of like the community building, actually, I'm not sure I'm a good community builder. I think community building would be justified as like two-way comms, but also they have comms with each other.
Yeah.
I would say in my group, for the most part, it's a lot of two-way comms, but they don't communicate with each other. Yeah. So it's probably not community building as such, but super intimate at like a really nice sort of scale.
Yeah. I don't think that's talked enough about in the AI conversation at the moment is that humanity is just becoming so much more important with AI. And it's, as you say, we're building more intimate teams. We're trying to create more intimate value for customers. So you've got to know your customers better. And if you take the kind of approach that you've advocated for around advisors and investors, you need those relationships to be more authentic and more transparent too. It's such a great point. And I think we should be talking more about it.
And I think I'm going to have to go soon. I've got daughter drop off, but I think it's really interesting or important too that, well, I think you want to make the least things binary as possible. And we have lots of people in our core 46 group that are like, honestly, I want to give you money, but I am not liquid for another 3 months or till literally 12 months. And I honestly believe that they will, anyway, we need it or whatever, they'll give us the money in 3 months or 12 months, whenever they said. But like, we don't have this scenario now where they've said no. They've just gone no because they're liquid and they haven't told me why or whatever. Yeah. They're with us. And I expect in 12 months, I've already closed our next round. It's just at that exact moment when I asked them, it just wasn't timely.
Yeah. That's so important. Have we got time for one more question or you got a dash? Yeah. I wanted to talk about pivoting versus persevering, because I know you've got a view on this and I'd love to hear it.
I would suggest that I buy into, which a lot of other investors and founders buy into, is that the rate of experiment, change, improvement, and the compounding of that is, and like shipping, if you will, in a technical term, is the most important thing that exists, period. And as long as that is heading in the like vision's direction, it's all you can do. Because
it's the velocity of learning.
It's the velocity of learning and then implementing and trying. So I think that like that's the core, and not being scared of doing it and being absolutely brutal. Like We try, so you have no idea how much shit we try that we just go, yeah, no, trash.
Yeah.
Like got nowhere near what it's like worse. So we tried this thing and it got 20 customers. We tried this and it got 2, whatever. We thought this was cool. Cut. Next. And it's the only way that you can sort of build like an IP and knowledge moat that really, really matters.
Yeah.
At a surface level, for us, people could just be like, dude, you're doing forums and a CRM. And they're inevitably going to be the same thing. So the premise of what we're doing is all the engagement, activity, feedback, insights that go on the forum get pulled into your CRM, like into threads, and prompts you to do things with it, right? So if you just looked at what we're doing on the outside and you're like forum and CRM, you're like, oh, whatever, bro. So many people could do that. Those things exist. But if we explain to you over the course of what we have learned and know and said, we're building this content-led CRM that's full stack purposely for founders to like build and activate the early believers. If I tell you the story, you'll be like, holy shit, the amount under that is totally wild.
Yeah.
So I think like that, in my opinion, to like terribly answer your question, it's all that matters. Yeah. And so I don't even know the definition of a pivot, but all I'm suggesting is you should be trying and improving things like literally by the day, multiple times a day. And sooner or later, you'll figure it out, or you won't. But people will have seen the effort, and you can't be denied that you gave it the reddest hot crack ever. And so people won't be upset, particularly if you've communicated it. And like, this is terrible advice, but even when we're doing, it's kind of good advice. When we're building out our memo or our new announcement or whatever, hey, you think that me and Andy wrote all that stuff ourselves and then just sent it out to the world? Man, we had like 25 people input on that over a period of time to try to like do the best possible job ever. And I'm sure it'll be saved somewhere, but the first version to the last, over a 1 week period.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, you can tell you've got this intuition of a great founder. You've got all these mindsets and principles and rules that you're navigating by. And I think it's fabulous. And to sum up what you've said there, the way that I talk about it to our founders is, until you get to product market fit, you're not growing for growth, you're growing for learning. And what you're saying is it's all about the speed of your learning. And if you're running out of learnings or ways to improve, maybe that's the time to throw it in. But if you're still learning at a high clip and you haven't given up, you've still got that conviction that the world needs to change in the way that you think it needs to change, you should probably persevere. And I think that's great advice.
I think that's the perfect conclusion, and it's not about, I just want to suggest to finalize, it's not about hedging the fact that you could still fuck up, and it's not about that. It's really just about being ultra proactive in trying to figure out the best possible way with, base principle thinking to find the quickest line of sight to whatever the purest way to succeed is. That's all it is. And if you are built anything like me, and I think there's a problem with the way anything's done, I'm not willing to do it that way. I want everything to be done the best possible way. And it does have to be my way. As I just said, even our memo is a culmination of 25 people. I'm the dumbest of the 25, I would suggest. And so it's not about me, it's just about figuring out the best possible way to do it at the fastest clip.
It's a great way to end. Jock, it's been absolutely awesome to have you on. How can people get on board with Community VC? Go to the website. Any particular call to actions you want to share?
I shared some links to you guys on communityvc.com as a founder or as a potential investor advisor, advocate, expert. You can literally apply to join our forums for free. So we have some main forums and then all of these subsets. And then in terms of Iceberg, I sent through that as well on my LinkedIn. We did a big announcement yesterday. You can read all about it and join a wait list. It's also free too. So there's sort of things that you could do.
Yeah, awesome. So go to your website, check out you on LinkedIn. You've got a great feed there. Thanks so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. Absolutely fabulous. If you want to know more about LeapSheep, of course, you can go to leapsheep.com and check out the support that we offer for founders. You can request a startup builder strategy session. Next week, we have, or in 2 weeks' time, rather, we've got another fabulous guest on the show. We've got Pete Neal, post-exit founder from Partners for Growth. I'm really looking forward to the conversation with him. So until then, Jock, have a good road ahead and look forward to seeing you on socials.